You start Cairn thinking it's just about climbing calmly, checking the route, and enjoying the view, and then, out of nowhere, your character slips as if they stepped on soap, your stamina evaporates, and you plummet without understanding what you did wrong. The cruelest part is that the game doesn't always tell you why. It just punishes you, leaving you staring at the precipice thinking, okay, but what detail did I miss? That is exactly why in today's video, I'm going to show you 10 things Cairn does not explain properly. Those hidden tricks and rules that seem small, but decide whether you'll have a clean climb or become a statistic on the ground. I'm Matthew, and the video starts right now. This is the tip I wish I'd learned before losing several good minutes of climbing to an invisible error. In Cairn, when Ava's hands start to shake, it's not just a cute animation detail. It's the game telling you, without saying a word, that your grip stamina is at its limit and the next slip up could lead to a free fall. The problem is that the game doesn't give you an alert, doesn't beep, and doesn't highlight anything on the interface. It just lets you feel confident for a second, and then suddenly you feel the character disconnect from the wall. So remember this, shaking hands is your red light. If you wait for just one more move, that move is often exactly what brings you down. And that's where the chalk comes in. When you see the shaking, apply chalk now. Chalk multiplies your grip by 12 times, and this completely changes the outcome of that critical situation. Instead of letting go without knowing why, you gain a real window to reposition, breathe, find a better hold, and continue the climb with control. After I started treating the shaking as an automatic trigger for chalk, my random falls practically disappeared. It seems small, but it becomes a run-saving habit. Shake, chalk, stabilize, and only then do you plan your next step calmly instead of betting the entire climb on one last desperate pull. The tip Cairn messes with you most on is deep breathing is a stamina recharge, not just a nice detail of the animation. The game doesn't give you a bar, so it forces you to read Ava's body. When her breathing is calm and rhythmic, she's under control. When it starts to accelerate into that nervous panting, it's the game screaming that you're at your limit and need to find a real rest spot. And here's the part that made me plummet out of nowhere several times. Staying still for a second doesn't mean you've recovered. If you stop in a bad spot with poorly distributed weight and mediocre holds, you are just standing still, accumulating fatigue, until the moment your hand simply lets go and boom, free fall. The sign that stamina is returning is that deep recovery breath, as if she is actually managing to rest there. For me, the turning point was treating this as a golden rule. Before inventing the next heroic move, I stop and watch the character for half a second. If the breathing hasn't settled, I don't give myself permission to continue, even if it looks visually fine, because the game hides exhaustion in layers and charges you with a fall when you least expect it. When your breathing is already getting fast, it's a sign you're getting tired and need to find a more natural, comfortable position to recover. So, next time you feel the game dropped you for no reason, bet on this. You were climbing on credit without realizing it. Stop. Lock in a solid position and wait to see those deep breaths before taking the next step. This completely changes the pace of the climb and cuts out those mysterious falls caused by accumulated fatigue. The tip that saved me most from stupid falls was discovering manual limb control with R1 plus analog stick. The game's auto climb is convenient, but it has a serious problem. On overhangs and ceilings, it decides for you which hand or foot to move, and sometimes it makes absolutely nonsensical choices that literally throw you into the void. You press up, thinking you're going to climb, and suddenly the character releases the wrong hand, loses balance, and falls without you understanding what happened. When you hold R1 on PlayStation and use the analog stick, you take total control. You choose exactly which limb to release and where it goes. This might seem like a detail, but in technical sections, especially inverted ceilings or walls with spaced out holds, it's the difference between a clean move or a frustrating fall. The game doesn't teach you this properly in the tutorial. So many people spend hours fighting the auto climb without knowing they can turn off this help when it matters. For me, the breakthrough was on overhangs. I realized the auto climb was trying to make me release my main support hand to reach something distant, when in reality, the right move was to reposition a foot first to gain leverage. With manual control, I literally direct the limb I want to move, perform the sequence at my own pace, and avoid those dumb moves. The automatic system insists on suggesting, so if you're falling out of nowhere on ceilings or difficult walls, stop blindly trusting the auto climb. Hold R1, take a deep breath, and make the choice yourself. It might be slower at first, but it's infinitely safer and gives you real control over the climb, especially when every wrong move means starting all over again at the bottom. You know when you're high up, think you're safe, and suddenly the screen starts to shake and your stamina vanishes in the blink of an eye? The game forgot to tell you the golden rule of real climbing that it applies behind the scenes, the rule of 3 points of contact. If you try to play Spider-Man and hang by only 2 limbs to stretch yourself out, the game will punish your balance instantly and drop you without mercy. The secret here is pure mechanical discipline. Always keep 3 limbs stuck to the rock while moving only 1. It sounds obvious, but in a rush, we try to skip steps, releasing a hand and a foot almost together, and that's when disaster strikes. When you're supported by only 2 points, your body weight becomes unstable, the character starts to visibly shake, and your resistance bar drains as if it has a hole in it, leading to muscle failure much faster. I learned this the hard way in unstable rock sections. I thought the game was being unfair or buggy, but I was actually breaking its physics. The stability you gain by securing that firm foot before releasing a hand is massive. You stop fighting the controller and start flowing on the wall because the system understands you're secure and stops consuming extra energy just to maintain precarious balance. So, if there's one thing to take from this tip, don't rush. Before moving the next hand, look at your feet and ensure both are locked or that you have a solid triangular base. Playing while respecting the 3 points of contact transforms those desperate climbs into something technical and controlled, and you'll stop having those falls that seem to come from nowhere, but were actually just physics charging you the price. This piton tip is one of those things that once you learn it, you actually get annoyed. You didn't notice it sooner. The piton isn't just a mental checkpoint, it's literally a full breather. I started treating the piton as a technical break because Cairn loves to leave you in that treacherous state of, I think I can make it. And then you leave the spot thinking you're fine. But inside, your stamina is at its end and the next sequence already demands a high price. The trick is simple, but changes everything. After hammering the piton, press triangle or Y or Q on the equivalent to hang from it and wait for the green flash. This flash is your contract with the game saying, okay, now you've actually recovered 100%. Without waiting for this signal, you're just kidding yourself because you start moving again while still tired. And the game does not forgive hidden fatigue when an overhang, an unstable passage, or a long reach comes up. I've lost attempts precisely because of this. I drive the piton in, give that sigh of relief, and move out on reflex, as if I'd pressed a save button. But it's not that. It's more like stopping at a water station in the middle of a trail. If you don't stop to drink, it doesn't matter that the station is there. And the worst part is that the fall that follows seems random, but it's born from that rushed decision to leave with low stamina. So my habit became automatic. Piton goes in, I hang, look at the rhythm of the game, wait for the green flash, and only then do I plan the next move. This removes that feeling of injustice and turns the piton into a pacing tool not just a safety measure. This is one of those mechanics the game hides on purpose, and that made me very angry until I understood the physics of it. In Cairn, your arms aren't made to support weight. They are made only for balance. If you climb like a monkey, hanging by your arms and pulling your body up all the time, your stamina will melt 10 times faster than it should. And that's when those sudden slips happen. The ones that look like bugs, but are pure simulated muscle failure. The game changer happens when you start forcing the high feet technique. The secret is to position your feet as high as possible, often even above the line where your hands were moments before, and use a crouch over them to propel your body. It's the legs that have to do the brute lifting force. The hands are only there to ensure you don't fall backward while your thighs push the weight up. It took me a while to get the hang of it because the standard gamer intuition is hand up, pull. But when you invert this logic and focus on finding a foothold before reaching for the next handhold, the difference in the resistance bar is staggering. You realize that those long stretches, which used to leave you in the flashing red, suddenly become manageable because your legs can take the punishment much better than your arms. So, next time you're on a vertical wall and feel like you're gonna slip, don't desperately try to grab something higher with your hand. Look down, bring your feet up, crouch against the wall, and transfer the weight. The game punishes those who climb with their biceps, but rewards those who climb with their legs. Understanding this transforms, frustrating, falls into a technical and much safer climb. We have that RPG habit of saving the best items for the right moment that never comes, but in Cairn, having extra pitons in your inventory usually means you're going to return to the ground in the most painful way possible. The rule I adopted after losing a lot of progress is don't be a cheapskate. Every 10 or 15 meters, I drive in a safety point, no exceptions. The game doesn't warn you when the abyss has become too high, so you need to create your own safety net before the height becomes fatal. Where this stops being a recommendation and becomes a requirement is right before any overhang or ceiling. These are the sections where gravity pulls hardest and the chance of a mechanical error or stamina failure explodes. If you have a piton right below you, a failure there becomes a shortfall with minimal damage, a scare. Without it, you plummet everything you've climbed in the last 10 minutes, and the frustration of losing an entire climb due to petty saving is what makes many people quit the game. But there's a cruel catch. Driving the piton isn't automatic. You have to get the hammer timing right, and missing it is painful. Wasting a piton because you were nervous and missed the quick time event of the hammer leaves you in a horrible situation, without the item and without the safety. Because of this, I take a deep breath before I start hammering. I'd rather spend 2 extra seconds focusing on the rhythm of the strike than see my equipment go to waste and be left exposed. So change that "I'll save it for later" mentality. Later is now, before that difficult section. Use your pitons as manual checkpoints that you create. It's much better to reach the top with an empty inventory but alive than to fall back to the start of the mountain with pockets full of equipment that served no purpose when you actually needed it. You know that classic mistake of thinking descending is just doing the inverse of ascending? In Cairn, that is the perfect recipe for disaster. Trying to down climb manually, groping the wall with your foot in search of a hold you can't see properly, drains your stamina at an insane speed. The game doesn't tell you, but the mechanic of descending by hand is extremely punitive. It drastically increases the risk of a silly slip, and almost always ends with you becoming a statistic at the foot of the mountain. The solution the game leaves somewhat implied, but which changes everything, is the aggressive use of rappel. Instead of risking your neck trying to climb down, clinging to the rock, attach the rope to a secure point, set the anchor, and descend in a controlled manner. It's a different world. You transform a descent that would be a nightmare of stamina, micromanagement, and panic into a fluid movement where you have total control over speed and zero stress from the energy bar pressing you. This becomes vital when you need to retreat to get water or investigate an alternative route you left behind. I got tired of dying over nothing, trying to descend 3 meters to reach a resource, turning a simple exploration task into unnecessary drama. With the rappel, you go down, fill your canteen, get what you need, and you're still in one piece to continue the ascent without having burned your mental and physical resources on a disastrous descent. So get it out of your head that spending rope or a piton to go down is a waste. The real waste is losing an hour of progress because you wanted to save equipment and go down by hand. If the direction is down, the rope becomes mandatory. Tie the knot, trust the gear, and descend like a pro instead of trying to guess where to put your foot and ending up plummeting out of pure stubbornness. The biggest beginner mistake is climbing with tunnel vision, looking only at the next immediate hold. That is exactly how you fall into the most cruel and silent trap in the game, the stamina trap. You climb confidently up to a point where suddenly there's nowhere else to go. But you've also already spent too much energy to be able to descend safely. The game gives you the tool to avoid this with L1 or tab, and ignoring this free camera is asking to die. Before spending a single drop of sweat on the wall, use this camera to do a complete reading of the rock as if it were a map. It's not just about looking for where to go up, it's about strategically identifying where the real rest points are, and especially where the dead ends and those holds that look good but are rotten are located. The game's visuals are purposely deceptive. What looks like an obvious route from afar often ends in a smooth wall or an impossible ceiling that will drain your bar to total failure. For me, using the free cam transformed the experience from a desperate reflex test to tactical chess. I stopped trusting luck and started tracing the line mentally. I'll go up there, recover on that platform, avoid that crumbling section. When you climb, already knowing the destination, you save stamina because you don't hesitate. You don't stay hanging there shaking while looking for what to do. Hesitation and doubt spend more energy than the movement itself. So, take your finger off the climb button and put it on the camera first. If you enter a wall blind in Cairn, the fault for the fall isn't the physics or the game being cheesy, it's entirely yours for not doing the reconnaissance. Planning the route with the free camera is the difference between reaching the top with energy to spare or plummeting screaming because you wedged yourself into a place from which there was mathematically no way out. We bring that habit from other games of thinking food is only for filling up a health bar, right? In Cairn, eating that mushroom or raw meat in a rush is basically throwing resources away. The game doesn't explain it well, but raw food is dirty fuel. It kills hunger, sure, but it gives you absolutely none of the essential buffs for grip, grit, determination, and warmth. You eat and think you're ready, but in reality, you're climbing the mountain with a weak engine. This is where that invisible hunger comes in. It dropped me several times without me understanding why. Without those buffs from a hot meal, your hidden attributes start to degrade silently as the altitude rises and the cold bites. You think your character is 100%, but your stamina efficiency is falling and your tolerance for error is decreasing. Suddenly, on a simple move, you let go of the wall and fall. It wasn't a control error. It was your character collapsing from a lack of real nutrition. Because of this, I turned the bivouac into a sacred ritual. I don't leave the tent without cooking absolutely everything I can. Mix the ingredients, use the stove, and ensure you're leaving with those bonus icons active. Those wasted minutes cooking are what ensure your stamina will last twice as long on the ice wall ahead. It is the brutal difference between a prepared professional climber and an amateur who will freeze at the first gust of wind. So stop being lazy and use the pot. If you're falling out of nowhere in the highest and most difficult parts, stop blaming the controller and take a look at what you ate at the last camp. Hot food in this game is safety equipment just as much as your rope and your pitons. A belly full of raw food won't hold anyone on the mountain when the weather turns.